Okay, my name is Gabriela Gallego, and today I'm going to present our work, Translative Analysis of Inclusive Language from Gender Perspective, Approaches from Twitter Corpus. Today we're going to address an introduction, methodology, results, conclusions. First, the objective of this project is a comparative analysis of the translation of 5 recommended terms recognized as inclusive in the Guía para el uso del lenguaje inclusivo desde un enfoque de derechos humanos y perspectiva de género, y el Manual para el uso de un lenguaje incluyente y con perspectiva de género. These two books were created by Mexican associations and part of the government in order to promote the use of an inclusive language. Even though it's a promotion or it's an invitation, it's not an obligation. So the government, its staff or people are not forced and obligated to use them, but they are really motivated to use it. Okay, so we chose and select those terms that were known as recommended, but also we chose those terms that were used as not recommended or exclusive terms in order for us to gain a little bit more information and for future analysis and contrasts between Spanish and English inclusive language. Now, the first part was, as I already said, to identify those words that these books recognize as recommended, which means inclusive, are terms that are well seen or political correct, we might say. And also those terms that are not recommended or are exclusive. Once we were able to identify them, we decided to search for its use not only in political discourse or in I don't know, like in a government atmosphere, or I don't know, maybe at schools, but we decided to compare or search for these terms in an ordinary speech or in an ordinary way of communication. So we chose, well, now known as X, but in those times it was still known as Twitter, and we decide to search those terms and its uses through the platform. For that, we were able to use the software known as Tweetbinder. With that tool, you search a word, and it gives you a report of not only the time it is used, but also the explicit tweets. Of course, everything is confidential, and we need to follow a certain privacy rules and alignments. Okay, guidelines. Sorry. And once we get all the information, we were able to create our own corpus. This is brand new. Okay, once all the information was selected, we searched for around 201 terms. We proceeded to tag it and to count the frequencies of use. For that, we use unconc and untags for us to had a real number, statistically speaking, about the use of these terms, whether a positive or negative use. The comparative analysis was done by selecting the 5 recommended terms with the highest ranked or hits, and its translation in different representative English corpus as for example, the Tenten Corpora, the Corpus of Contemporary American English, and the Mark Davis No Corpus. So that means that these 5 terms were the ones that appear most of the times through our search from X or Twitter corpus. The first one, the ones with the majority of hits in this case, was persona joven. Then we have mujer lesbiana, trabajadora sexual, población LGBT+, persona intersexual. These were the terms that appeared the most in the Spanish corpus. So were these five terms the ones that we search in our English corpuses or corpora? So now you have here the results. The recommended translation was, of course, they're not like big surprises. Mujer lesbiana, the recommended translation is a lesbian woman. Persona intersexual, intersexual person. Población LGBT más, LGBT plus community. Persona joven, a young person. Trabajadora sexual, sex worker. So actually, there's not like a big surprise in the recommended translation, which means that we might be following the same paths when we are talking about inclusive language. There's not like a big or a very surprising differences. We are following the same steps or the same paths in both languages. And let's talk about the number of hits or uses that we found. Well, these words were, we searched them through the frequency, I'm sorry, the number of frequency, it's in one corpus and in the other one, okay, in the Tencent corpora. And we have, for example, the lesbian woman in one corpus appeared 23 times. Meanwhile, in our second one, we got 367. So if we pay attention to numbers, numbers are a big deal, okay? In the frequency Tencent corpora, we found more times or more, well, yeah, more times used the term. So, but in a big difference, which means that, well, the information, I guess, was bigger. Now, if we compare the amount of times it appears, if if we compare that with the second one, the 1010, of course it's like super wide difference. But if we compare them with the COCA, we got, for example, that mujer lesbiana, and there's like a similar amount of uses among them. I'm not saying like mujer lesbiana and lesbian woman have exactly the same, but if we pay attention, we're talking about thousands. And also in persona joven, we have thousands, for example. So it's not like a big difference. And if we pay attention, that the term intersexual person is not very much used in English rather than Spanish, for example. In Spanish, we do have persona intersexual, but also población LGBT más is not as used as in English. English seems to represent better the LGBT plus community, okay? So in Spanish, might be not, or in our work, it didn't appear that it was used that much. But also, it's very interesting to notice that the term lesbian woman or mujer well, in English, it doesn't appear that much as in Spanish. For example, in Spanish, we got a very different or a wide difference. But in trabajadora sexual, the numbers are actually very similar. So we might believe that this term, even though it's not very used, but it's the one, like the term that people use when we're referring to well, sex worker or trabajadora sexual. Well, in our conclusions, this work hasn't finished. We are still comparing terms. For the purposes of this exercise, we chose the five terms that were with the majority of hits and they were the uses recommended, but we are still comparing and we have a lot of more information coming. But in the first one, we need to agree that there is a similar use of inclusive terms. We have, of course, the numbers are different and the differences are in some cases very wide, but we have terms that its translation, it's very similar. The way it is structured or the order of words might change, of course, because the grammar rules and the placements and the syntaxes, but we have very similar terms, which means that there is a similar usage. But also, it means that we are, both languages so far are still or are following the same the same road or the same path when speaking of inclusive language. And also, we have that the term with less frequency use are the same in both languages. Okay, So that's something that also calls our attention. The terms that were not very used in Spanish are also terms that are not very or used a lot in English. So that also calls our attention. And for us, this exercise or this the beginning of these investigations, it let us know that there's a lot of work to do when we are referring to this topic, but also that we are very similar and translations are going to be not, I'm not saying that easy, but means that we are not far away from its original font. So well, so far this is what we got. Hope you, well, if you have any comments, well, please let us know, and hope you found something interesting and new information to while referring to the topic. Thank you very much.